I'd like to call the June 19th Personnel Committee meeting to order. Dana, could you take roll call, please?
Alderman Barber.
Here.
Alderman Hassan is excused. Alderman Holfer is excused. Dale Weichel.
Here.
Tom Trainer.
Here.
Richard Budney.
Here.
Frank Fresco.
Here.
And Sarah Lynn Emmons is not here yet.
Okay.
Pledge.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 2 is welcome to you, members, and introduction. We're missing some tonight, so if it's okay with everybody, we can put that on until next meeting. Appreciate it.
Put it on again.
Pardon?
I think we can put that on again next time, but we should probably do it this time. Kelly hasn't met people, so.
Okay. Well, let's start. Each one of you, starting from over there, introduce yourself.
Okay, my name's Frank Fresco. I've lived in Franklin for 45 years. So, been on the committee 5 years. I retired from TSA, Milwaukee.
Tom Trainer, I've been a resident 9.5 years. I formerly was manager. Enjoy the city.
Nobody knows me.
That's a cheap one.
John Nelson, Mayor, Mayor of our fine city, former member of the Personnel Commission as an alderman. Thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Kelly Hirsch, Director of Administration. I have lived here with my family of 6. I have 4 kids with my husband. We have lived here since 2016 and from the Milwaukee area.
May I ask you what you did prior to this position?
Yes, I worked in insurance for Fortune 200 companies, so I spent 16 years at the Hartford and a couple of years over at subsidiary. It's a employee benefits specialist group of Northwestern Mutual.
Were you an actuary or?
No.
Dale Weichel, I've lived in Franklin 41 years. I'm a semi-retired insurance agent.
Richard Budney, I've lived in Franklin for 8 years. I was a senior manager of the Internal Revenue Service for 36 years prior to retired.
My name is Alderman Mike Barber. I've lived here for 33 years. I've been on the Personnel Commission since 2006, and I've been an alderman for 7. Enjoyed it every minute.
We better get off this subject.
From the audience, please, could you introduce?
Yes. I'm Danielle Brown. I'm the new finance director. I come from Waterford. I was at the Village Hall for 5 years. I still live there. I don't know if I'm going to make the transition to Franklin yet, but we'll see. A lot bigger, though.
Okay. Chief.
Rick Oliva, Chief of Police. I've lived here 18 years. Oh, I lived here 17.
Great. Okay, thank you. Item 3, citizen comment period. Any citizens want to make comment on anything? Okay, not hearing any, we'll close that and move on to item 4, approval of the minutes from 3/20/23.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the 3/20/23 minutes. Any comments, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, request for the police department to add one police officer position over authorized strength from, yeah, excuse me, my voice comes in and out, from 8/1/23 through 12/31/23. Chief, I think you can help me.
Yeah, we've been having difficulties identifying and recruiting police officers. Department, pretty much all over the place. The last few years, struggle. And right now we have 3 vacancies. What I'd like to do is have 4 positions, and we would send, say, the extra officer position, 4th position, to the academy. That person would start first week in August and graduate in December. So for that time period, we could be 1 over authorized strength. Not asking for any additional funds. The funds are out vacancies. They're over 300,000 personnel costs.
Hang on a second. Okay, go on.
Chief, then is your intent to hire this individual at their graduation, 12/31?
He would be hired, he or she would be hired prior to the academy. So starting August, will be August, that person would be payroll.
Would there be a pay differential from when they get hired in August until when they graduate?
No, although I have the ability to start them at a lower rate than starting pay, and start them at the beginning officer. That's because of the competition out there. Most departments are doing that now, so if we would offer a lower wage than starting off pay, we most likely would lose that person.
Would there be any conflict among the ranks, so to speak, that the individual is getting full pay versus that are already officers?
No, should be no issue. I think our officers understand, they know the position we're in. The union is aware of it, there's no opposition.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
I'll yield.
Well,
With the recent negotiations of the contract, weren't funds allocated from 22 to already pay for what might be some negotiated settlements?
That's not part of my budget for the negotiation. So, you answer that better than I.
Mr. Mayor?
So going back to the first part of this, I have spoken to the chief in great detail about a number of the questions that you just brought up, and I fully support this this attempt at making sure we've got full staff and taking advantage of that opportunity now. There's no extra outlay of money, so that's fine. Everything I fully support his intent. I'm sorry, Alderman, I'm not sure what your question was.
When we had the contract negotiations with the police union, funds were taken from 22, 23, and 24 to compensate for what might be increases. Did we deplete all the funds from 23 to that?
No.
No.
300,000.
Yeah, and the chiefs just said about the excess that's right there now. There'll be no negative impact on the budget period.
Okay.
Kelly, you have anything? All right, you through me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have anything?
No, the only thing I have to say is I support this. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's a good decision. Work with what we have.
Dana?
I was just going to say to Tom's point about starting the people in the academy off at the regular police officer rate. That's what we've done in the last 7 people. This isn't the thing.
Thank you.
Okay. Before I open this up, I'm not at all against this, but the personnel committee has never been in for staffing numbers. We've never had anything to say about it. Is this a change, or? Because, I mean, the staffing numbers always came from mayor and common council, and now we're asked about it. I don't have a problem with it, it's just I'm wondering if we're the right place to go.
We have occasionally, and I think in the administrative rules it says that you can. and
Okay.
it was asked to be on the agenda.
Okay, is there any further comment,
Are
questions?
we then moving this to council for review as well?
Yes,
That's part of the motion that we're
it's on the
doing it?
agenda for tomorrow night.
Okay.
All right, any further comments, questions?
Move to approve the request.
Second.
Motion made, to approve or send it to common council for approval. And seconded. Any further questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Department of Administration updates. Would that be you?
Yeah. So we had we had 2 meetings with our management staff since I've been brought on. And we are looking for ways to, well, in addition to paying our staff more, and being more in line with what our competition is, we are also looking for creative ways to provide to our staff through retention and that sort of thing to keep them happy and keep their careers here with the city. I guess I'm kind of spilling over into the next point as well.
So are you asking something?
Yeah, we were going to ask about having sort of a brainstorming process. Gotta look at what we had done earlier today. So class and compensation study, we need to figure out if we are going to update that through the same process that we had in the past, which is hiring a consultant. If we want to take portions of it and hire a consultant for portions of it instead of the full class and comp study, and how we want to go about doing that big piece of it. So that's a whole separate thing in and of itself. And then there's talk about merit and performance evaluations, which my understanding is that it had been approved in the past, but has not been necessarily implemented, and training and resources. So just kind of covering what we had brought up in our management meeting as of earlier today, bringing it here as well.
Did that include the paid time off discussions that we've had?
There was a little bit of it, yeah. It was around incentivizing employees, looking at how we can adjust that, make it more comparable, and to kind of get the edge where we can.
So are you asking us to come up with our ideas?
Oh, I think I just wanted to open up the discussion and see how you all feel about.
Some of the things
Yes,
you're-
yes.
Okay. All right, okay. Anybody against it?
Well, benefits and compensation has typically come through this body. Is that your intention as you would work through with staff?
Yes.
Bring that forward for us to review and then
Yes, sir.
make a recommendation to council?
Yes.
Yes, part of it is, do we want to start over from scratch, or do we want to keep parts of our current class and comp study so that they don't have to start over from scratch?
I think that would be best served by administration. I mean, we know what we have, so if you're thinking maybe something different or what we worked through, recently, and all of us have been here for that. So,
Cost containment is very important rather than starting from scratch. Present company.
I like that idea.
But are we not talking about something beyond the fact of dollars and compensation? Talking about quality of work life,
Yeah,
Something of
that
that
has
nature,
been-
something, yeah.
Yeah, that has been
It-
brought up.
Intangibles that would bring somebody to be happier to work for us than for somebody else.
Yes.
Best practices, I don't know. Where I came from, which was the federal government, we never could do outside consultants, but we would work pretty heavily on best practices, contacting other agencies or stuff and see what works well with them. And I don't know, that would have to be networking, I imagine,
Mm-hmm.
with your peers. But
One of the duties of the personnel committee is to do comparables every year. I think that's part of what you're saying.
Yes.
you're gonna have to go beyond dollars.
Pardon?
You're gonna have to go beyond
Well,
dollars.
it's a good
Yeah.
starting point.
Yeah.
But you do want incentive, non-compensation incentives, you know, quality of life things.
Right.
There are things out there I think you could take advantage of. That's not going to cost any. So not going to cost in terms of compensation. It may be training costs, things of that nature, but not directly pay salary.
Correct.
It can be as powerful as an increase.
Okay, so does everybody agree that first place to start is with money? Get the comparables and then move on from there?
I think you're looking at pay and benefit.
Right. Oh, think over the benefits until next month, maybe get some ideas. And to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure if there's any difference between the management benefits and the employees. We'd have to get, those, and, everything starts with money.
But, that's our generation, I get this Journal of Accountancy, and they're talking about how to advise clients. And a big issue that they have is maintaining your workforce. And part of the discussion is our generation had a sense of loyalty, where you would stay with somewhere. That's not true with the current generation.
Right.
And they're looking more like at time off, work from home, child care, things like that, things that were off our radar screen, when you and our generation were working. So I think we could sort of look that way, because I don't know the mean age of our workforce, but I'm sure you're gonna obviously have younger folks coming in. So I think that compensation is important, but it may not be number one anymore.
No, I'm not saying it's number one, but I am saying it's a vital part
It's
of it.
important, yes.
Like a work-life balance is.
Yes,
kind of
right. That's
yeah.
more important to a lot of people now, more than
Right.
their earlier generation.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, so what we need for the next meeting is number one, comp study, or whatever our meeting is. Number two is what are the benefits that the employees are presently getting? And 3 recommendations on possible benefits. Does that sort of encompass it all?
Have you thought at all about like a consultant to help with that process?
Yes.
And is
Yes.
there one that you're considering at this point?
I don't know who we had used in the past.
Just of HR the last time.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, just to kind of, was when you say comps, you're talking a huge undertaking. So what we're doing is we're looking at taking parts of an already study that's been completed. We're looking at the ability and the ways in which to benefit our employees for retention. It's not just recruitment, it's retention. And what we're not looking to do is reduce any employee's pay or benefits or time off. That is completely off the table, out the window, dead in an alley. Okay, we're not going to even consider lowering anything, because that's not the goal here, because it's about retention. So what we're going to do is look at other apples to apples employees, other jurisdictions, and to the points that I've heard earlier is what some of the best practices are of other governmental and non-governmental employers. It's not an easy fix. It's not a one-shot, here you go. This is going to evolve. It's going to be fluid, and it's going to be, in a way in which to be fiscally responsible, yet have the reality check of this is what's going to take to keep employees.
Typically, administration in the past, and all of the administrators that I've known, come up with kind of things you're doing, talking to management. I think they've also included talking to staff about really what's going to keep them here. So I hope that's a component within
100%.
your analysis, and the consultant might want to help you do that. But the whole idea is what is a comprehensive kind of approach to this? I think it's benefits, it's salary, I think it's work environment, I think it's whatever else we can do to put a whole package there. I'm sure that's going to take more than 6 months to do that. Typically, it has in the past. So I'm saying, like, I don't know what your timeline would be, but I'd say I really want to see a comprehensive study that includes all those components, and then put it together as a package.
Can you repeat those?
And what?
Can you repeat those components?
Okay, it's the employee input. It's a consultant that kind of pulls all this together. It's the benefit package. It's the pay package, and within the work environment. What's gonna make people want to be part of Franklin? I don't think we can completely turn around the fact that it's a transient workforce at this point, but we can do everything we can to make it something that's more desirable for people that will want it to stick around and be a benefit to the city. I don't think it's a 6-month deal. I mean, I think you're committing to a long-term analysis here.
You're pulling a lot of data. That's why can't do this on July 17th when we meet again. So yeah, I think you're right, Alderman, that it could be probably 6 months. It could even take a year.
I don't want to isolate on those individual components. I want to see it as part of the comprehensive package. We can vote on this thing and then vote on this thing, vote on this thing, but I'd like to see it all pulled together to make people happy.
One of the things I'd like to just caution is the time frame. And there may be things that we need to move quicker on, as we don't want to reduce staff. We don't want to lose staff. So if there's things that may take a benefit sooner, that was the direction today to department heads about getting some feedback and things to move forward with.
Mayor, what is that an immediate need?
I think every department's a little different on what their need is, and like for the PD, certain amounts with the 3 vacancies, looking at what that group is looking, and he knows what his group needs, but that's also a union contract deal, opposed to someone that may work in inspection, and that has a different skill set that is in high demand, but there may only be a handful available anywhere, but them having the latitude and the longitude to make different decisions as a hiring manager or boss. Is there a specific? I can't hone down that this person wants 3 weeks, 2 days of personal time off coming in the door, opposed to this person that wants, a higher salary with the work. There's everyone's going to be a little different. We don't want to put everybody in a box. Okay, to look at the old way of hiring, the old way of retaining was more of an autocratic way. It's going to have to be almost giving that area of the city that opportunity to work their own management areas. It has to be to make it work.
Work environment is important too, such as managers' approaches, cross-training, things where people feel more part of things, where instead of the top-down management approach.
More collaborative.
More collaborative, yeah.
Absolutely.
That they have more control over their environment. The money thing, we can get surveys and say we're equal to, above, or below other places, and that's an easy fix if we budgeted or get it in the budget, but the ones where the people, if they're leaving because they don't like their supervisor or their manager, those things, it's not an easy thing, but it's something that's not going to cost a lot of money, but can be as important as.
Well, you want to come to work during the
Yeah. If I don't like coming to work, it doesn't matter what you pay.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
You're going to lose the person.
And that's,
Dan, go ahead.
well, that is absolutely part of what we are looking at. We want to, I've asked some of management to, well, I've asked them all to go through, look at their job descriptions and redline what is and is not appropriate and applicable to our positions today. Because my understanding is there's job descriptions that don't really match up with what's happening now. And that's an issue. And it becomes an issue when you're trying to compare one admin in one department to another admin in another department. And they have different rankings and have different starting pays. And one, for example, the city clerk's office, what's come to me a couple of times. They have a job description that my understanding is doesn't encompass everything that they do or they're expected to know and do and be experts in. One of the big pieces is the election. They have to have training. There's expertise that they must have in order to fulfill this job function, but they are rated at a lesser level than some of our other admin that don't have to know as much. So that's created those conversations with me and concerns that have been brought forward. So my thought process is maybe one of the first starting points that we could do is get more in line with those job descriptions, or get those job descriptions rather more in line with what our employees are doing today. Dana and I have talked about having that cross-training with all of our admins, so that way if we have somebody out on leave in one department, we can have somebody come in and it's relatively painless. And ultimately my thought process about having them go through and redline and sit down with their employees and redline is that's where you get the buy-in. That's where you get that investment from the employees and from the.
Dana, you pretty much every month done an exit review, staffing review. You know pretty much why people left. Could we get kind of a rundown on why people left?
I would have to go back through my old exit interviews and see if I could put something together. The majority of them are retirements, but we have had people leave for higher pay. Not too many other things.
I mean, you've got an admin assistant here that left because they moved out of the area. Got retirements in here. I don't. I look at the staffing over. It doesn't look like anyone at low pay or low pay. Then again, we can.
I can say
My only caution, yes, I guess John could explain a little bit more about what he means by the individualized approach. Because if you're going to have something happening here and someone over here is going to be saying, well, why don't I get that? And you're going to have that possibility of that being push-pull and causing some consternation along the way as well. So I guess I'd kind of like it to see a little bit more uniform rather than as much as strictly individual. I can understand the needs and basis that you're describing, but there's also that push-pull. And that would concern me given the whole hierarchy, the number of employees we have.
Yes, however, you're going to have to look at area of demand, and it's not going to be. We're going to, Alderman. What our goal is uniformity. That's our goal. Reality is, are we able to do that? We don't know at this point. We're going to try to be uniform, but if you're a department head and you are looking for a very, and I'm going to keep going back to inspection, a certain level of education and everything that we need, that's in high demand. And we're going to have to step up to get that position filled, perhaps a little more than another area which may be easier to fill. And I just want to have that ability, if this high demand inspection for that, so that's the goal is uniformity, but we can't, if we sit there back here and say, well, we want uniformity, and the position goes unfilled, and now we're not serving a citizen, and we're falling behind, we have to have that ability to fix that.
Well, I commend that you want to take that on. I think it's been something that deserves the look.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Okay. So far, what we've got, possibility of a consultant, comp study, benefits of all the employees, possible proposals for the future, exit review, and job description. Does that pretty much cover everything?
Environment analysis.
What's that?
Environment analysis. Working environment. Talked about that a little bit.
He's talking about data, right?
What's that?
You're talking about the data right now that you want to accumulate? You
Yeah.
want to consolidate
Right.
data. But what you're saying was
Is that pretty much
interviews.
give everything that everybody would like to see?
I think that's a start. And then I think we have to find, go through every one of those items that you talk about. And
Okay.
again, I hate to say it, but I'm going to with all Barbara that it's going to take several months to have this. I think that we chew off a little bit at a time and solve issues if there are any. So I guess I would ask, what is the most important portion of all those?
We had talked about employee input, some kind of an employee survey appropriate to get that piece of information. You know, we know what we want, we know what some of the managers advise, but it doesn't seem, you can get some of it from exit interviews. It seems like there's a lot of retirements and stuff. It's hard to get.
Make it
people to-
anonymous. Anonymous. Make it anonymous. So they don't-
Definitely, it has to be anonymous. Otherwise, people aren't going to tell you. And you have to be able to create the environment where people believe that it's anonymous. It can't be traced back to them, otherwise they're going to tell you.
Does a
And we'll be
consultant,
off chasing rabbits that we don't need to.
does a consultant need to be bid out for consulting services?
I didn't find anything that it had to be.
Not that. Well, again, to your point, Alderman, prudent, it depends how the scope.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at the few thousand, or are we looking at it, and if it does go to a higher threshold, we would have to. And it, depending on who did the last study, it may be the most fiscally responsible to go with the last study, just hone it and do the updates since 2015 with that same company. We'll look at how they were paid. The company that did it in 15, was it bid out, or was this competitively bid, or so if that's the case.
How soon can you share your thoughts on what that would be, what you'd like to see happen there? Because I mean, that would be the first thing I'd like to see happen, is have a consultant on board, day one with, we take this journey.
I would like to see the last consultant report. There is one? I'd like to see that first.
I can email that out
And
to
see.
everybody.
Perhaps maybe to keep it simple, maybe next meeting is just a review of the last consultant report
Right.
and go from there, as opposed to having this laundry list of things.
We
with
may-
people's
we
head
may-
charts.
We may find their pigeonhole. They're thinking more old school, some consultant. And we're trying to become more original with what we're doing.
Or more relevant in our workforce.
Right.
I mean, it comes down to some of the complaints that I've heard is semantics, right? Secretary versus an admin. These are easy wins for us. in my opinion, that we can easily make those changes or get the job descriptions more applicable to what somebody's doing. To me, those are easy wins.
Yeah, there's certain titles mean certain things to people, and again, that doesn't cost any money to call to somebody in the admin assistant versus a secretary. That
Right.
makes them feel better about it.
Right. Right. There's a lot of negative connotation to secretary with some of the women that I've spoken with recently.
That's the old getting coffee. and
Yes,
stuff,
exactly.
As opposed to doing meaningful work.
Right.
Is there a name of a consultant that you would have? Maybe just show them what the last report was as well and see if they can come up, if they have any recommendations to move it beyond those steps.
Carlson Detman is the one that most around use.
That's what we
They
use.
failed to respond to our bid the last time around because they had too much work going on. So we were not able to do them.
Could you just reach out to them and
Yep.
see if they'd entertain that? There's another consultant taking what we have now and maybe making recommendations how we can push that beyond those barriers to what the workplace is today might be a second opinion.
Right. Or building off of what we have, especially if
Right.
there was a lack of buy-in from the previous analysis.
Well, it's a new world, so
Right.
my idea is let's try to make it a new world for everybody.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about 8 to 9 years later. It's a lot of changes.
Yeah, the world was dramatically.
Yes,
9 years.
exactly.
Okay, so now we're sort of thinking is to get consultants report from when the comp study was done,
Good stuff.
just for our management. Okay, so then we could do that.
Everybody.
What do you mean just for management?
What's that?
Just for, what did you mean by just for management?
Or you're gonna pull out the comp study for every employee?
It's a
Existing
generalized summary, is it not?
It includes everybody except for our union groups.
But the comp study also included job description. Right?
We're talking about the final report on it, right?
Yeah.
What?
The final report to our last comp study.
Okay. Or is that where we wanna go?
I do.
I'd like to see that.
I think it's a good starting.
So then from there, move on to the,
Where it takes. That sounds like a good start.
I guess my question is, what are you gonna get for the comp study?
I think it's a baseline. We can take a look at, was it 8 years ago?
2015.
So it's a baseline that we can springboard off of, and maybe some of the ideas there that weren't incorporated at the time that the survey came out or the report came out, maybe something that forward. So I think it's nothing more than kind of refreshing us, our memories of what that included back then. Maybe we have questions why we some might have been fiscally responsible not to do that. So I think this is a good baseline at least to understand what that report. Then I think I'd like to be able to see if we can talk about it. Some of the questions we might have up, move forward, and in the meantime, to be reaching out for consultants.
Okay, so the only thing we're looking at next meeting is a comp study.
I think there's a few other items that we're gonna need to start talking about and make before we can
Relating to this?
finalize the comp study. As an example, in our last fire negotiations, took some benefits away from our union employees. We never took made those same benefit changes to our battalion.
You took some You what?
We took some benefits away from our union firefighters. I don't know if you remember that instead of them getting to take 13 paid holidays now, they have to get paid out for 2 of them. We didn't really take it away, but they don't get the same number of days off. They get paid out for some of their days. We never made that same change to our battalion chiefs, and we had promised the union that we would.
Oh, okay.
So if we go into negotiations again this fall, it's going to be a problem. And same with, I believe, 2 contracts ago, we cut their sick leave benefits. Never did that for the battalion chiefs.
Well, but that's a little bit different from what we hear. I'm not
Right.
saying it shouldn't go forward.
But some benefits, we can't wait to compare when we do the class and comp
Right.
study. We need to
Okay,
make
so as a
adjustments
separate
ahead
thing,
of time.
the next meeting, look
Yes.
at that. Okay,
Yeah, we could bring forward
Yep.
those that we need to do right away, and so we can take over.
so we're on the same page. Next meeting, we want to look at what the comp study said and the police, fire department's benefit. Dana, is that correct?
And any of the other things that are hanging.
Yeah, it's like staffing
Right.
report, if we
Okay.
have to discuss that again.
All right. All right. Anybody have it, since there's no motion to be made, anybody have anything else to say? Okay, let's move on to item 7, discussion regarding potential upcoming human resources projects. No action to be taken.
What we just did.
Yeah, it's kind of what they were combined.
Okay.
Is that it? Because I have something to add. If question, are you done? I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I'm done. Yep.
I just went through some notes I had from our prior meetings, and I believe we have some loose ends or some things that we have not finished through. Let's see. I think the most prevalent one is about the sergeants. We discussed the sergeants having comp time equal, the police sergeants having comp time equal to that of employees.
Well, that was already
we've-
voted on.
Okay, it was by the Common Council.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
why not?
Going to come. We moved to
Okay.
move it on to council, and council did act on it.
What was the action?
It failed. It was a 3-3 tie, and Steve Olson chose not to vote, and it failed.
Is it going to be brought up again? Or
I would like it to be brought up
Is
again.
it dead?
I have not been approached by anyone to bring it back up again, but I don't know if we can, if there's a certain time,
That was
and it might be 1 year until it can get brought back, but I would strongly encourage it to be brought back by the sergeants.
Are we empowered enough to bring it back, or do we have to wait for it to be
I don't know the answer to that. For Dana for now, because I don't know.
I would think that we have to wait until we're approached.
Okay, all right. Another one, the big one, Frank had alluded to it earlier, the PTO, the sick leave versus the PTO. We had a room full of people here that were quite concerned about that, and all of a sudden it just sort of stopped. You know, we aren't doing anything with that. I mean, there's an argument for both. I think PTO was more progressive, there's other place, but it sort of died. I have this dated August 15th. Are we doing anything with the PTO? Because we had a lot of concerned employees here. You, obviously, Kelly, were not here, but the room was actually full. So,
I
is
think
that
at this
something?
point it
Is
died
that
out when Peggy left, unless anybody brings it back and wants it to be looked at.
Well, we as a group were going to look at it. We voted down the compensation for the sergeants. We recommended not to go forward with it. But we didn't vote down the PTO or the comp time. We just sort of had a discussion. Peggy put out this facsimile of what it would look like. And it went through, some of the employees went through it with a fine tooth comb and found some concerns about it. And she was cautioning them it was just a general outline of what it may look like, and there may be some. So are we continuing with the sick leave versus the PTO discussion for the employees?
I don't know, that's one of the reasons why we had this on the agenda is what items do we still want to look at?
This is the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's got, Dina probably could brief you on it, but it seemed to be, it got quite involved. And
Well, quite honestly, some of the employees are gonna like it, some are gonna absolutely hate it.
And we saw that. With
Because
them
number one,
populating it.
somebody who's, comes to work, when they have a sprained foot or whatever, and they're very conscientious, what's gonna happen to their sick leave? Now, on the other hand, you have a person who, has to go shopping, and they take a day off of sick leave. Well, what do you do with those two groups? It's a pretty tough, thing to do, because some people, and then, are you gonna have two groups of people, one that still gets their sick leave, and another group that doesn't?
No,
You're turning into I think that's the reason why it got pretty much dropped.
I think it became controversial, and Peggy got overwhelmed with her budget, and we had asked, and she said, well, this is going to have to be put on the shelf because I have to work the budget the next month or two. That's how I recall things happening. But
Frank?
I think, if we were talking about quality of work life, I think this is a big issue with that. I think it's, from what I've seen and been acquainted with PTO programs, it really is a good thing for employees. I don't think it came out that way when it was, whatever was put out, and we had some people who had some real legitimate concern. And I think we almost have to start that thing over again and come up with a plan on how the presentation should go, because it gives people really a lot more control over their life and their time off, which current generation is asking.
so we have two opposing views here, from what I hear, and so do we bring it? I strongly encourage us to bring it back up.
Can I just ask you to back up just a little bit? What exactly what's the discussion about? Do we have PTO versus PTO and sick days? Or
We have sick days, and to eliminate sick days and have PTO instead of it.
Okay.
However, if I recall correctly, Peggy was talking about allowing people to have the choice of retaining it, but new employees would come in with PTO. You would
That's correct.
Okay.
The people would have a choice
That
of
was
whether they go to the new program or stay with the program that they already have.
versus totally cutting out the sick leave and saying you're now on PTO and you don't have a choice.
What were the pros and cons?
It was
It was terrible.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this was, I mean, to say the room was packed was an understatement, because I did confirm with the chair, who had been here 38 years, that was when he got re-upped, had you ever seen a group this size here?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was no. And they were not happy. And nobody was out in the parking lot, high-fiving, hey, look, this is a great idea. So the employees that were here didn't want it. And it was overwhelming. I did not have one employee say to me, hey, you know what, this is a great idea. So before, we start resurrecting some things that are off to the side, what we're kind of doing is we're kind of taking the approach that we discussed earlier about how we're going to try to fix things moving forward with hiring. I would think that would be almost counterproductive to go back to that whole study and that whole argument when we're actually looking at doing this whole comp study review, which would encompass things about time off and things like that. We're going to get that input. I wouldn't want to entertain anything that was brought up from the prior administration because it was negative. I mean, we've got, Amy Schluter is one of the many, many employees that were out here that were listening to this. It was very terrible.
Well, one thing I'd like to say, hang on a second. Sure. A lot of the people that were here were sergeants and their wives and everything. They really didn't have any opinion on it. Not, I mean, they had an opinion on comp study.
It was packed.
It was packed, I agree it was, but a lot of them were sergeants, and they were not,
One of them.
anyway.
I'm in favor of looking at that as part of what it might be, that comprehensive approach.
Exactly.
Not anything that we want to bring back at this point unless it's,
Well,
and if you sense that there should be that correction based upon what the employees are saying and what their needs are.
Sure.
I mean, they work for you. These people. Everybody works for the administration at this point. We're the kind of like the guiding force behind that. So if you think that that's something that is what our employees are saying is going to make it that environment or that tip point that says, yeah, I want to work for the city because I get this, then I think that has to be part of the package. But
Agreed.
and I think that should be totally incorporated. Both any kind of items that from the past would be incorporated into what we look at for the future. That's just my opinion.
My feeling is that when you have a number of people, like you said, usually, the disagreeable ones would be the outspoken ones, normally. And some of those that are concerned or actually want to be more educated on it, be more silent. So I don't believe everybody in the room that was here for the PTO meeting was against taking away sick leave, not getting PTO.
They were against the proposal. And when you say sergeants, you had 8, let's say they had a spouse at 16 and 16 of the 40 plus that were jamming in.
No, Mr. Mayor. What I mean is that, they were commingled, and the comp time for the sergeants was a different discussion than
Yes,
the
you are
PTO.
correct.
But I believe you're right. I think we had that both discussions at the same time. So you had a joint group here.
I honestly don't think it went that far. Number one, you ask people, what are you gonna do for long-term disability? You're out more than a week or 2 weeks. Where are you gonna get the coverage for that? Nobody knew because we weren't that far in giving it out. But were they willing, if they thought it was a good idea, what would they have thought if they said, hey, you get sick and go in the hospital for a month, you don't get paid? Are they gonna be happy with that?
No.
That the employee didn't know that because the whole thing was not presented. So it was not really a slam bang. It was other things. Is the city going to take out a policy for each employee? Now we're talking some pretty expensive proposals.
So the point I'd like to focus on is what these two gentlemen are talking about is putting it all in one package.
Right.
I think that this is a big enough item and we're kicking the can down the road. And that I personally feel that it should have its own autonomy. It ought to be a separate item that we look at apart from a whole package of things. Because it could become overwhelming. You could have 10 different things and one thing will, overpower it. So I would like to see it still be where it was before as a separate issue that we take on. If it's kind of blended in with the overall package.
What is the negative of the sick leave? That's with the sick time.
Dale is possibly the most outspoken on that. I'm talking about the PTO. Being pro PTO or?
I'm wondering how this came about. What is the negative viewpoint on having sick leave?
The problem is that it started out that there was a benefit that an employee in the police department has, but that's a separate story. There's a benefit that for every year of service as a retirement benefit, the employee is paid 2 hours of sick leave at their retirement. But you have to have the sick leave earned. So in other words, if somebody had 20 hours of sick leave, they had 10 years of service, they get 20 hours. The problem is that there's, in my opinion, is that some of these employees, some employees are unbelievably fantastic with using their sick leave. Well, they'd end up, let's say they had 20 years, they'd get 40 hours. But they gave the city back maybe 140 hours. Then we have another employee who has the same 20 years, but geez, surprise, they had 40 hours of sick leave. So that employee costs the city money. Now, I understand the argument people get sick and use the sick leave. That's the benefit, and that's why it's sick. I have no problem with it. But there are some employees that abuse the sick leave. The city should reward the people that save the city money. So that's where it started. And that was sort of dropped with the idea that maybe, it wasn't a for sure thing, the PTO would be a better option. So that's the reason why, which I'm still against paying the, I don't want to say bad employee, but the employee has used up their sick leave. Every payday, they get a couple hours of sick leave, they use it. I'm still against that. But I am also in favor of people being rewarded for saving the city money. That's where it came.
One thing we have to remember is provide vacation time or sick time to people that is theirs to spend it the way that they want. I'm from both schools. I seldom took sick leave for shopping purposes or babysitting or whatever the case may be. So some of the younger employees I have dealt with in my past career indicated, you gave me 10 days of sick time. Those are my 10 days of sick time. I can use those as I
But the
become
key
ill.
is sick. And right in the handbook, it says sick. It does not say to use at your discretion.
However, if I'm one of those that uses a lot of my sick time and the benefit you've given me, I'm going to call in
No,
and
the
say, I
benefit
got
is-
it.
Well, we're getting way off the subject. But I will say this, the benefit is sick leave. It's not whenever you want to use it. They're taking and saying, it's whenever I want to use it and not sick leave. There's a huge difference. But anyway, we're way off the subject.
I would like to follow through. Can I make a motion? I'm not as schooled on procedure as you are, but the motion I'd like to make is that we handle this as a separate item, not part of the whole overall study of the employees.
Motion, agenda discussion.
Okay. Oh, I see. I don't know that. I'm not that schooled on the procedure, but you see, to me, sorry, Kelly. To me, this seems important enough that it has its own discussion and not part of all the other things you're going to look at as far as salary comps and such.
In a way, I don't want to make an issue that isn't there. I mean, I think probably for us to discreetly look at that around the edges to get a better understanding of where that fits and what actually that plan is and what it means to employees is something we could do. But it would only be because we would want to make sure that if it's going to be included in a packet, it has any relevance.
I think if we're doing a survey out to employees, we ask employees what they're looking for.
I don't think, I mean, it was a big enough issue. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But at the same time, I think that nobody is.
It could taint everything else. I mean, it's such a big issue. You could come through with all the other positive aspects, and it by itself is overwhelming. That's why I think it should have a life of its own.
It could. I mean, I'd be in favor of just doing a review of that whole topic without any conclusion as to which way it's going to go, whether we need it. But if people aren't raising it, I mean, I think there's other things but as an item for review, periodically as we're going through the next few meetings, just have some discussion on it, I'd be all in favor of that, but nothing else beyond that.
I think that this PTO could be a good component in terms of quality of work life the issue that people had, that people abuse sick pay, sick days, that's not a benefits issue. That's actually a supervisory issue.
Yeah, we're discussing the issue again. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
Yep.
we're discussing that specific issue again, and what I'm proposing is that we discuss it separate and distinct from all the other ones. I mean, it can be brought in together at the
Yeah.
end.
I'm not saying that this is something we should do, but I think we need to consider it, because from what I've seen in other companies and institutions, is it really does benefit the employee, and it can make their quality of work life better.
So can
But
it be
it
a-
wasn't, there's something missing in terms of presentation that.
So can it be a separate agenda item,
Sure.
perhaps? I mean, would
Okay.
that be a way of wording it?
One thing I also caution is if we make this a big deal, going to open up a can of, I agree with the alderman here, say, look at this street manner and fashion.
I agree.
Just my thoughts.
I disagree, because if I'm an employee, I think that you're just, you're ignoring it. I mean, as far as the can of worms, it's been out there.
Are there
There's
other
no
fish to
room.
fry other than the PTO, short-term disability?
No, but I
things of
think
that
it's one of the
nature?
bigger fish.
I think it's part of it, but I don't know that. Personally, my thoughts are it's not up here like we're talking.
Well, I accomplished what I wanted to, and that's to resurrect or bring it back up into discussion. Because we had it one time. Peggy was she sent out a memorandum to all employees with her spreadsheet stuff. That's what brought them in here. So I just
Yeah, it did.
yeah, I
What
just
brought
don't
him
want,
in here?
I just don't want to see it die. That's all. And I have one other thing, and I written down here, and I don't understand it, but it's last year biometrics process went poorly, and the prior method should be looked into. Was that had to do something with the health insurance?
Yeah.
HSA?
Every year, employees and their spouses, if they're on the insurance, have to do a health risk assessment. For about 9 years, we used a company called IHS, and they came in here and did the biometrics for everybody, drew the blood, and everybody got the results within a couple days. Due to COVID, that company went out of business. So we had to create a different program to do.
So did we answer it though? Is it resolved?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I mean, we changed our process and we're doing it completely different now, where everybody just goes to their own doctor and has their physical and whatever lab work their doctor wants them to do. And as long as the doctor signs off that the person had their wellness check and any age appropriate lab work, and they turn in a form to me, that's all we require. So it only needs to be talked again if somebody wants to propose a different.
Yeah, I just had it as a possible loose end, but if it's been tied off, that's fine. Because sometimes we have these gaps between our meetings.
Yeah.
We'll have a hot issue, and I think the PTO is a hot issue, and all of a sudden I don't hear about it again. We want to at least follow through on that.
My experience with that coming from the Hartford, we had a bank of time. And after so many years of experience, you got another week. And then when you reached a certain level, you got another day. And it was, 5 years and another day and that sort of thing. And by the time that I had ended my employment there to come here, I had 29 days of paid time off to be used at my discretion. Now, obviously, there were issues if you had unscheduled PTO. So that's the difference, was the scheduled and unscheduled PTO bank. But ultimately, all 29 days were mine to use as I found appropriate. And then if I didn't use all 29, I could carry up to 1 week's worth to the next year.
And we don't have PTO in the city.
Right.
All right. The only things I'd like to see in the future, couple like one of them was a retirement sick leave. I'd like to go through the personnel manual and make sure that's up to date. And there's a couple of things, like I said before that, supposed to do comparables every year. We haven't. It's worked out okay. Second thing is to get the employee handbook completely done. Those are big things. And to start the, or get the evaluation program going. It's supposed to have been done 7-8 years ago, and it hasn't, for a lot of reasons. Not throwing stone.
What is the, I'm sorry, what's the evaluation?
The department heads evaluating their payroll raise is based on
Performance.
Merit pay.
performance.
It's performance-based.
Okay.
Performance-based.
How it's done? I
Pardon me?
mean, how it's done, like giving people numbers, or
Well, the whole program has to be started.
do we look at it? I mean, the way it's done. Do we look at the way it's done?
It's not done.
Oh,
That's where the
oh,
problem
I see.
is. Okay. Do we have enough there?
I think we've got more. Thinking about my plate, I think, yeah, we're good.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Item 8, staffing report.
Not much new on here, obviously. The Director of Administration position's filled, obviously the Director of Finance position's filled, the Planning Manager's filled. So really the only things that we're looking for right now are the couple police officers, which they basically have those positions picked out and are doing background checks on. We're looking for one more firefighter. We're looking for the admin assistant person down in engineering. One more dispatcher, a building inspector, and a sewer and water tech. All positions that are fairly difficult to fill.
Yeah, I've had quite a conversation with Tony section about there is a very limited pool, I guess, to grab from for people that have commercial experience. So what may be more feasible is to draw upon the experience of, his name, Ted or Ed? Ted, thank you. Ted from that department to potentially bring somebody really new into this and teach him or her how to go about fulfilling that position.
We've had one applicant so far, and it's been posted for weeks. That one person is coming in for an interview next week, so keep your fingers crossed. But otherwise, yeah,
What
one
position is
applicant. Building inspector.
Oh,
Do we have any other person or to be a building inspector?
That's
Well,
a great,
Amy?
that's a great question.
There's two of us that could possibly do it, but we need to get a commercial qualifications, and that's a very difficult thing to do. I know one of the two of us has tried the test already and maybe going back for the second time.
Is there a cost associated with that?
That's can be covered by the city. It has been in the past.
So it's, I mean, I was looking at it from how we support our police officers, starting them from scratch and bringing them in.
When I moved up from secretary to the permit coordinator, I paid for my own schooling to learn the class for UDC, and I paid for the test. That's how bad I wanted the job. But I was given 6 months once I got the job to get my certification.
What would it take at this point for you to get your
There's usually a class at MATC that is very helpful, and there's like 7 books that you have to park in a crate. It's an open book test, but it's a 4-hour straight test with 7 different books. It's pretty intense. I haven't taken the class yet. I would like to. Point. Some people pass it on the first try, but it's usually 5, 6, 7 tries, and you have to wait like a good almost a month between tests. Next test to get into the next test, and they're only like Appleton, Eau Claire, Madison, Brookfield. There's like only 4 or 5 tests in Wisconsin testing.
Is there any proctors that would help understand what would be on the test and how to study for it?
There's people within the departments that have the commercial, but most of them have had it for 5 or 10 years.
But there's no present teacher out there that we could,
I haven't seen it on the
Connect you
MATC class list. That's the best way to do it. Go point by point, and they give you sample tests.
My understanding, talking to Tony just recently, the guy that used to teach that all the time retired and isn't
Yep.
even there any longer, so I don't know if it's.
I don't even know if there's a class
available.
yet.
Yeah,
something
it's-
we
it's
could talk
difficult.
to the state about.
Every community around here is in the same predicament, trying to figure out what to do.
Except we have two people here that have been interested. Maybe
Yeah.
there's something we could have on the next agenda where we could get.
Well,
When
We're getting
is this,
pretty
Phil?
far out of Robert's rules.
Oh,
What's
I'm just
Robert's
suggesting
rules?
something for next,
Pardon?
I'm just suggesting something for next agenda.
Well, but we're talking to people and
Oh,
We're not
that way,
supposed to be.
through you, okay. I understand. Maybe.
Thank you.
Maybe the next meeting, we could look at this. When is the person coming in?
Next Wednesday, I believe.
Because I would like us to still talk about it, because there's no problem having qualified people if we could help them become qualified. Exactly.
Similar to
Well,
that
and
with
it's
the
interesting
new
in our-
recruits that we have on the police department.
Yeah, perfectly. But let's try to look at that for next
Yeah.
meeting and get an update.
I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but we're getting away and
What's your job, though?
thank you. All right.
Ouch.
We're through with the staffing report.
Anybody has questions?
Okay, let's, next scheduled meeting is July 17th, 2023. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded?
Give it to Tom.
July 22.
Tom seconded.
No, Tom was the original.
July 27th.
Frank was the second.
It was, I don't know if I said June, but it's July 7th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.